Hello, everyone. I'm Sofie and Marien. I'm here together with my colleague Eva Henskens from TICTeC. We're a civic tech company based in Belgium. And over the next 20 minutes, what I like to do is I would like to explore how technology, and in particular voting aid applications, how they can tackle disengagement among young people. And this ties really nicely into our mission at TICTeC to inform and engage people. We do that with voting aid applications, but for instance, we also have a participation platform that a lot of municipalities use to inform and engage citizens. We have tools for online debates that newspapers use instead of their comment section, or in addition to. We have online deliberative tools. For instance, at this moment in Belgium, there is a debate on healthcare, Karuna, that also uses some of our tools. And the bottom line or the goal of all of these tools is basically to inform and engage citizens. And we also do that with voting aid applications. And what I would like to do in this talk, I would like to talk about our experience in developing these voting aid applications together with our academic and our media partners. And also what I will draw on is research of the University of Antwerp of one of our most recent VAAs. That is a VAA that was specifically targeted at young people and the results of that. So I'll share what worked, what surprised us, and where do we go next. But before we zoom in on young people and on VAAs, I would like to spend a moment on why we believe tools like this are so important. And for that, I would like to go back to the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the internet. If you go back to then, at that moment, there was high hope. There were a lot of promises. The idea of the internet was that it would be a democratizing force, right? It would give access to all information. It would give everybody a voice. It would facilitate debates. So these were the ideas that were there at the end of the 20th century. If we look at today, the outcome is not as what we would hope for. It's a little bit different. Yes, there is more access to information, but it's really hard to tell what is true and what is not true. There's a lot of misinformation. There's so much information that often it's overwhelming, how much information that there is. It's hard to process. Yes, people are more connected. That is true, but we're also living in filter bubbles, in echo chambers that are often showing us what we already agree with, rather than trying to build connections, to build understanding. More people are giving a voice, but also there's a lot of polarization, there's a lot of hate. So it's basically a huge paradox, or a number of paradoxes. So the internet has a huge democratizing potential, but it's not delivering. Right? So that is also something that we talked about this morning. A huge potential, but it's not delivering. That is why at TICTeC we really believe that it's essential to intentionally build digital spaces for democracy, spaces that promote democracy rather than undermine democracy. So we're not going for any kind of engagement. We're going for engagement that is informative, that is inclusive, and that is constructive. And this is something that we can do. We strongly believe that we can do this because these digital spaces, they are human creations, right? That is also something that we talked about this morning. They're shaped by regulations or lack of regulation. They're shaped by our choices, by our values. So we can do things differently. And one of the things we talked about fact checks just a moment ago. Another way of doing that, another way of building a digital space that can promote democracy are voting aid applications. So let me take a moment to talk you through what is a voting aid application, what can it do? So it's a digital tool that helps voters compare their own views with the positions of parties and candidates. And the core is a series of political statements. And you can see one there on the slide. It's in Dutch, an example of one of our VAAs that reads in English basically something like primary school pupils should receive free school meals. So that was one of the issues in the campaign that the party, or Social Democratic Party, brought that forward. Other parties disagree with that. So that was one of the statements that there was debate about. Should there be free school meals? You could agree or disagree, and you could see a number of these kind of statements. And based on the answers you give as a voter, at the end, you come to a result page. You also see an example there where you have the party that matches your position most. They're at the top, and then it goes to the bottom with the parties that matches your positions the least. So the result is personal, it's visual, it's easy to interpret. It doesn't tell voters who they should vote for, but it gives them information so they can make an informed choice. And VAAs are one of our most oldest digital tools. It's already been 20 years ago that Michiel Nuitemans, one of our co-founders at Tree Company, he's one of the architects of the Belgium VAA over 20 years ago, and since then we've worked on 9 editions of VAAs. The last one was with the 2024 election in Belgium, where we reached 7 million users. So the VAA was used 7 million times, and on a population of 11 million, that's quite a lot. And also we work together internationally. We've partnered up to develop voting aids in Ireland, in Switzerland. We're part of the Vote Match network that drafts statements for European VAA. And so throughout all of these years, we've seen that the use of these VAAs has strongly increased, and also that the research has increased. So these VAAs are extensively studied. So we know at this point quite well what they can do and what the impact is of such a VAA. So let me quickly walk you through the research of what we know about these VAAs. So what a VAA does is it makes information accessible. And the result of that, and maybe the most documented finding from the research, is that VAAs inform voters. Studies consistently show that people are way better able to position parties to know about their stances. So using VAAs increases the knowledge of voters on party positions. What a VAA does is it clearly shows you the position of parties on different policies, where the parties differ, what your position is, and how that differs from different parties. And especially in multi-party systems, I don't need to tell my Belgian or my Dutch colleagues here that is super useful, right? With a lot of choices out there, it's useful to get a side-by-side comparison. Because that is also what a VAA does. Political parties need to take a stand on every single question that they're asked to. So they can't pick and choose, like, okay, here I answer this question, and that question I do not answer. So VAs are not just matching tools, but we really believe, and the research also shows, that they're really engines of political learning, of transparency, and of empowerment, especially when they are well designed. But it goes beyond informing voters. VAAs also play a critical role in getting more voices heard. What the research also clearly shows is that it motivates voters. What we see is that using VAAs increases turnout, and it increases informed voting. So VAAs don't just educate, but they also motivate people to turn out, and to turn out in line with their policy preferences. And a third important element, it's not just about individuals. What VAAs also can do is they can spark conversations. They can open up spaces for insightful political conversations. So they can turn passive scrolling of information into active reflection. For instance, at a coffee machine at work, or at the kitchen table, we have a lot of stories about our youth VAA where parents and their kids discussed some of the issues of the youth VAA. Or, for instance, on social media, in a lively thread, people were discussing these statements. We've also really seen this potential play out in classrooms. We've developed, together with our partners in the Netherlands and in Germany, an educational tool, a way to use the VAAs in the classroom. For instance, here you can see a screen that says how the different students in the classroom voted on each statement, and you can use that to spark discussion. Or you can also, for instance, assign students to a specific party, and then they have to fill in the VAA from the perspective of that party. So in that sense, they see opposing views and they can engage in debate. So let's take a closer look at these young voters. Why are these young voters important? There's lots of concern about uninformed young voters. We know that turnout is lower among these groups and that it is declining. And at the same time, we also really know that these early years, that are formative years. And we really know that the attitudes you have, the behaviors you have at that point, that they persist throughout one's life. So if you do not vote the first times, it's very likely that you won't pick up on this and that you will vote less likely in the future. So it's not just a short-term challenge, but it is also really a long-term democratic investment. So can we inform this specific group of young voters? Can we motivate them? And how do we do that? How should our VAA look like so that it can inform young voters and motivate young voters? So how can we make something that works for this group? So together with our media and our academic partners, we designed a VAA that was specifically focused on young people. The core structure is similar than other VAAs that we've developed over the year with our partners. So again, there are statements that people need to fill in. They get a personalized result. They don't just get a ranking of parties, but they also get different positions, different arguments connected to these positions. People can change their position at this result page and then see, okay, if I changed my opinion on this statement, how does that affect the result? So in that way, it becomes more interactive and not just a one and done. And what we also did is we encourage sharing. As you can see an example here, we know not everybody would like to share their political preferences, so we also made sure there was enough shareable content that is less revealing, for instance, like how much time do you spend on doing the VAA, to encourage really people to share about the VAA. This is something that is the same in all VAAs. What was specifically different for this youth VAA is we developed it for young people, but also together with young people. In terms of content, we worked together with young people for the statements. We made sure that the content and the language was really geared towards young people. We added more contextual information to help the users better understand what the topic was about. So what is the status quo? What are arguments for and against? Also visually, it looked different. We really tried to mimic the content that they were used to on social media, and in particular on Instagram. So this is close to the Instagram page of News from the Belgian public broadcaster. We use bright colors, strong visuals, dynamic layout. We also use the swiping function, so you could swipe in between the statements, you could swipe for more information. So in that way, we really try to have an interaction style that they knew and that felt natural to them. But did it work? Right? You can try a lot of things. Did it work? Was it appealing for this group? First of all, an important finding is that the youth VAA was used 600,000 times. So again, for our population, these are quite important numbers. And we succeeded in bringing these young people from social media platforms to our youth VAA. Often you have to compete or operate within the social media ecosystems, and we know that is hard. But what we did is we really succeeded in taking back control, not letting the algorithm determine what they can see and what the boundaries are of the discussion. But we really pulled people back into civic spaces that we can control. And as I said in the beginning, I think this is really important that we should do that. But did that work, right? So we pulled them back into our platform, and did our platform work? Did our VAA inform and motivate? The University of Antwerp did 2 studies. Before the VAA was launched, they did a controlled experiment. So they randomly assigned people to a condition where, a controlled condition where they didn't see a VAA, one where they see the standard VAA, and one in which they used the youth VAA. And that way you can really compare the results. And then later on, once the VAA was launched, the control group, they studied whether they were exposed to the VAA or not. And in that sense, they could see what is the effect if they used the VAA themselves. So there's a controlled experiment and there is an observational study. And both have very clear results, namely after using this youth VAA, young voters were significantly more informed, more confident, and more motivated to vote. They compared the control group to the control group and to a standard VAA. So even our youth VAA scored better than our standard VAA for these young people. And also interesting, also people with low political interests, they got more informed, they got more motivated, and they got more confident. So to conclude, this youth VAA worked better for young people. And what we actually really believe is that it's not only young people. We don't see this as a separate product, but we really see this as a source of innovation, because clear language, more context information, this is actually also something that older people could use and would benefit from. So for the future, this is something that we're looking at. And I want to close this talk with a final point on the future. VAAs are very common in established democracies. They're widely used. There are way fewer VAA initiatives in newer democracies. They're very often one-off projects. They are not sustainable. Well, also in these countries, we just talked about it, it's also super important that there is independent information, that there is debate, that people are given a voice. And that's why we're now working with ProDemos in the Netherlands, and Anne, who's also in the room, and BBB in Germany, to build an international network to roll out high quality VAAs also beyond these established democracies. And our goal is to share knowledge and to support these local actors so that they really can do these VAAs in their own countries. And then that way we want to return back to this original promise of the internet. So if you know people or organizations working in this context and who want to work together, we're building this network right now. So get in touch with us at Tree Company or with ProDemos or with PPP. So let's make VAAs not just a European or a Western tool, but really a global democratic infrastructure. Thank you.